A couple of weeks ago, my friend told me to play Indika. I have PS Plus, it had just dropped, and I was like, you know what? Let's give this a shot. Let's see what this is about. I was also told by that same friend that this is about a nun who's going through psychosis. So I sat down, started the game, and quickly realized that this is a lot more than just disturbed behavior. And that's why I'm making this video today, because Indika really impressed me, really resonated with me. Now, on the surface, it looks like a fight between good and bad, but the more you dive into it, the more it seems like this internal battle of someone trying to be pure and just being human. Hey everyone, I'm Nikka, and I make videos about everything I question and overthink, and today we're looking at Indika and the deeper meaning behind it. Now, before we actually move on, one last thing. There will be spoilers. If you want to play the game and haven't played the game, please go do that and then come back to this video. With that being said, let's get into it.
Indika, a subversive, self-endeavorous, multi-meta-layered, non-perspective, conscious-driven action answer seeker out now.
But before we get into all the ins and outs, let's take a look at the plot. Once again, spoilers ahead. And if you have already played the game, don't worry, I've included timestamps, so feel free to skip ahead. Indika's story plays out in two timelines, a hyper-realistic now and an 8-bit past. In the present, Indika is a young nun living in a convent who hears a voice and sees visions that call itself the devil. The sisters, the other nuns, are suspicious of her. They give her chores. When she has a vision during mass, she ends up stumbling into the priest, and the convent punishes her with an errand. Take a sealed letter to Father Herman at the Danilov Monastery and do not open it. On the way there, she stumbles upon a wrecked prison train and is told by the conductor that most prisoners have been shot, but a few are still on the run. As she's making her way through town, she sees a prison guard sexually assaulting a woman. The guard notices her and starts walking to her, but just in time, an escaped prisoner named Ilya steps in to help her. Now, the whole scene is noticed by the train conductor, who Ilya guns down before forcing Indika on a motorbike that they eventually crash. Cut to the 8-bit past. A younger Indika helping in her father's bicycle shop. There she meets her love, a Romani boy named Mirko, who first stole a bike from her father's bike shop. Back in the present, Ilya's arm is shattered, frostbitten, and infected, but he refuses to go to the hospital, insisting that God is sending him to the temple of John Damascus in Spasov to find a relic called the Kudets, which he believes will heal him. On the way, Indika is tempted by the devil to open the letter, to find out that she's to be defrocked. So she changes her journey, joining Ilya, in the hope that the Kudets can heal more than just an arm. They hop on a train to Spasov, but on the way stop at a fish factory for Ilya to collect his things, that turn out to be finger puppets. They play like children for a moment before he collapses. Indika, afraid he is contracting an infection, amputates his arm. With one act, she saves his life, but kills his belief. Ilya then leaves her, saying that God has been silent since they met. But Indika doesn't stop and continues her journey to the temple, where she reunites with Ilya, who has read her letter. They eventually reach the temple and ask to see the Kudets, but are refused by the priest. Just then, an armed guard arrives, and in the scuffle, the priest is shot dead. Ilya, meanwhile, prays to the Kudets in vain, prompting him to steal it and run, leaving Indika behind to be arrested. Back in the past, Indika and Mirko plan to run away and steal money from her father, but are caught, and Mirko is shot dead by Indika's father. Back in the present, a guard offers Indika freedom for sex. Indika complies, but her devil manifests, leading Indika to disable the guard and escape. She then finds Ilya drunk without the Kudets, which he had sold at a pawn shop for a few rubles and a horn. Indika finds the shop, and while Ilya unintentionally creates a disturbance, she grabs the Kudets and starts praying to it. But Nothing happens. She opens it only to find it empty, and as her prayer beads scatter across the floor, her faith in God is shattered. So that's the plot of Indika. But of course, the plot is just the surface. What makes Indika powerful is the deeper meaning underneath. So let's talk about that. So who is Indika outside the monastery? What shaped her before we met her in the story? To really understand her, we have to start with her past. Now, the game shows us glimpses of it in those 8-bit flashbacks. Her father ran a bike shop, and when she was younger, she worked there with him. That's where she met Mirko, a boy who first stole a bike and then stole her heart. For a while, it was playful, innocent, maybe even the happiest we had ever seen her. But it didn't last. Indika and Mirko planned to run away together, and when her father found out, he killed Mirko. That moment shattered her first love and closed off the possibility of a different life. After that, her father sent her away to the monastery. And this is where I believe the split inside her begins. On the one side, there's the obedient nun, desperate to belong. On the other hand, there's a girl carrying grief, shame, and questions nobody wants to answer. And in the monastery is where we see this play out. This is the first place the game really shows us what she's up against. The monastery is where we first see how difficult Indika's life really is. In theory, a monastery should mean devotion, community, even sanctuary. But for her, it's the opposite. It's a place of blind obedience and loneliness. The sisters don't welcome her with warmth. Instead, they look down on her, treating her like she's dirty. They dismiss her, talk to her with disdain, as if she's already corrupt. When she repairs the steam room's engine, something that should earn praise, she's met with this snide remark.
Look, it works. You're not stupid at all. Why are you loitering here? Did you get thrown out of the evening service again? Leave me alone.
One of the cruelest moments comes when Indika hauls back water. Just as she was told, a nun dumps the bucket out, saying,
"No way. Sisters won't eat after her." "Mother, the sign of the cross saves from the plague, but this, God forgive me." Glory to.
As if her hands made it impure, as if she herself were evil. And that judgment doesn't just stop within the convent's walls.
The animals feel the unholiness.
I brought you some apples. Or Lovka, your favorite. Tisha, I must hurry to the train.
This is how the monastery, and really the world around, sees Indika. They're unsettled by her curiosity, her questions, her inability to fully conform. And in the end, they don't just punish her, they exile her. It feels less like discipline and more like abandonment, like they've washed their hands of her, even if it means she won't survive. The atmosphere of the monastery is bleak, cold, and the game reinforces that visually too. In early conversations, we never see Indika from the nun's perspective. The dialogues feel one-sided, isolating her even more. Only once do we see the nuns look directly at her, and in that moment, she's shown as small, diminished, and insignificant. Even the intro credits prove that too. Indika walks beside an annoyed nun who grows irritated when she asks a simple question about the letter.
To know what's in it. She asks me what's in it. How would I know what's in it?
Using her annoyance like a shield. Religion here doesn't bring people together, it cuts them off. And what makes it even more painful is that Indika isn't rebellious or cruel. She's gentle. She follows the rules. She tries to live the life expected of her. But none of that, unfortunately, protects her from contempt. And the devil, spells it out for us.
Were it not for the voice that was inculcating ideas in her, unforgivable for a Christian, she would have been a virtuous and rather mediocre nun.
All she ever wanted was peace, silence, for that voice to go away. From the sisters' perspective, though, it makes sense. For them, faith isn't about love or mercy, it's about defense. It's about shielding themselves from anything that they see as tainted. If something looks dangerous, it has to be cut off at the root. In their minds, they're the righteous ones, and Indika, with all her questions and her quiet refusal to fit in, is unrighteous. So from the very start, the monastery sets the tone for her whole story. Indika is not sheltered but shamed, not embraced but cast out. A place that should have been her spiritual home becomes the first proof that for her, faith doesn't bring peace, it only brings exile. And once Indika leaves the monastery, the world she enters is anything but holy. One of the first moments comes when she sees a prison guard sexually assaulting a woman. It's a horrifying scene, and I believe this works like foreshadowing, because later in the story, the same thing happens to her, except this time, Ilya isn't there to step in. What she witnesses isn't just another act of cruelty, it's a mirror of what's waiting for her. And then there's the dog. Indika and Ilya are chased by this monstrous, oversized dog. Eventually it dies, depending on how you see it. Either they kill it or they just escape it, but the conversation that follows is what really matters.
You killed it.
Don't deserve it. It's bad. It's sinful.
There are no sinners among dogs. Only humans can sin. Tempted by the devil. And that dog, its humans left, stopped feeding it. A matter of survival.
Interesting. So what's the difference between a human and a dog? The thing you're blaming the devil for is as likely to happen to a human as it is to a dog.
This whole exchange tells us more about Indika than almost anything else. She doesn't see the dog as evil. She sees it as hungry, abandoned, and acting out of survival. She refuses to accept the idea of sin the way Ilya does. For her, what's considered sin is just part of being alive. And through the devil's interruptions, the game keeps pushing that question. Are humans really different? Or are we just animals pretending our instincts have higher meaning? Now, when we put these two scenes that I've mentioned side by side, the pattern becomes clear. Outside the monastery, Indika is forced to face the cruelty of the world. She sees suffering, violence, desperation, and little by little, it chips away at the idea that God is present. Because if there is a God, why does the world look like this? Why is this the first thing she sees when she leaves the monastery? And while going through all these scenes again, not for some reason, it'll make sense, but it made me think of Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazovы. In that book, Ivan rejects God, not because he doubts his existence, but because of the suffering of children. He can't reconcile the idea of a loving God with a world so full of cruelty. Indika doesn't spell it out for us, but that silence that is left, it feels like it's asking the same question. And not only is this scene with the dog important to Indika's story, it's also important to Ilya's story, which brings us to him. Now, what makes Ilya stand out is that he's the one who seems to believe the most. Indika is the nun, yet she doubts. Ilya is the criminal, yet he insists that God speaks to him. At one point, he tells Indika about that moment on the train.
Ever since that night, everything, every event, it all happened as I was told it would.
And then, boom, as he puts it. He doesn't say boom. Everything in his life began to unfold like it was laid out by God himself. He even compares himself to the prodigal son, claiming the Lord would rather see a single sinner repent then thousands of righteous people continue in faith. That's why, at first, he almost looks like the hopeful one in the story. But as this journey goes on, just like always, the cracks start showing. His frostbitten hand rots, and when Indika saves his life by cutting it off, instead of thanking her, he turns on her, not because of the pain, but because she doesn't share his faith. And from this moment on, for Ilya, that's enough to make her no longer right in his eyes.
Will it go back?
Why not? It's not like it's harder for God to work one miracle than...
You didn't believe in it from the start.
And then comes the collapse of his character. When the Kudets fails him, when the miracle doesn't come, he doesn't just lose hope. He abandons everything. He sells the relic for just 5 rubles, which is basically 6 cents, just in case anybody wanted to know, and drinks it away. The man who once spoke so proudly of God ends up drunk, degraded, and even peeing himself. And this is where that earlier scene with the dog comes back around. The dog was abandoned, starving, desperate to survive. Indika said dogs couldn't sin, that they were only acting on instinct. But now, look at Ilya. He abandons his faith, gives it up for a drink, and loses all dignity. The difference between human and animal suddenly doesn't look so clear.
1 second. Did I undo my trousers?
Where is the Kudets?
In that moment, Ilya becomes exactly what Indika said about the dog. Just another creature driven by survival and stripped of anything else. And that's why, for me, Ilya's collapse hit so hard. He begins as the one who seems so full of faith, the one who sees a bigger plan. Yet by the end, he's the one who sinks lower. Now, there has been so much talk about the Kudets up to this point, so let's finally dig into what it actually is and why it matters. Now, in the game, as mentioned earlier, the Kudets is built up as this holy relic. It's described as the only rational remedy for everything from infertility to infidelity, even so-called afflictions of the soul. That phrase alone should tell you everything you need to know. Let me repeat that again. The only rational remedy, which is kind of hilarious and also deeply ironic. For Ilya, the Kudets is his last hope. He believes God already stopped the infection in his arm, but to heal it fully, he needs this relic. Indika doesn't buy into it at first, but when she reads the letter and finds out she's being defrocked, she decides to go along. She starts to wonder if maybe the Kudets could fix her too. When they finally reach the cathedral, Ilya gets his chance. He prays to the Kudets, desperate for a miracle, and nothing happens. He storms off in anger and his faith is gone. Later, Indika prays too, and surprise, surprise, same result. Absolutely nothing. And that's the point. The Kudets doesn't heal, it doesn't save, it was never the answer, and this is when Indika finally understands what she's been running from. And this is also something that I want to mention too, because this is where the leveling system in the game makes sense. Throughout the story, you earn points for praying, lighting candles, following rituals, but the game literally keeps reminding you that those points don't mean anything. You can stack up thousands of them, even millions, and they still won't save you. Just like the Kudets, they're empty. So when Indika shakes the Kudets at the end and the points spill out, it all comes together. The relic, the prayers, the points, none of it ever mattered. The whole thing was hollow, and clinging to it only kept her trapped. So after the Kudets turns out to be empty, what's left? The truth is, the real guiding force in Indika's life was never God. It was the devil, or at least what she calls the devil. But who is he really? A demon? A metaphor? or just her own inner voice? Throughout the game, as we've seen previously, the devil is the only one who actually talks to her. He questions her, mocks her, even tempts her. Sometimes he says the quiet part out loud, voicing desires she doesn't dare to admit.
Are you embarrassed to be so close to a man?
She's been waiting for that. He's quite a looker, huh? Thick boy.
Other times, he pokes holes in the rules she's forced to live under.
Useless labor is the basis of spiritual development. Indika didn't understand why she needed to retrieve the water from the well if there was a pump next door that took it from a sacred spring.
And that's what makes the devil so interesting, because he isn't some outside creature whispering evil into her ear. The devil is Indika. He's her thoughts, her doubts, her anger at the absurdity of it all. Blaming it on possession makes it easier for her to cope. If it's the devil's voice, then maybe faith can heal her. If it's really her own voice, then there's no escape. And we see this clear as day in the jailer's scene. The devil has been telling her all along, good and evil aren't separate sides. They're just labels. God and the devil, those are you. And the game proves it. When she looks back at the guard pinned down by the so-called devil, all she sees is a wardrobe knocked over. There was no demon. It was her all along. That final conversation between them makes it crystal clear. Indika calls herself bad, sinful. The devil pushes back, asking what bad even means. She tries to argue that dishonesty, unfairness, cruelty are evil, and he points out how slippery those words really are. Dogs bite when they're scared. Trees grow more leaves on one branch than the other. Is that unfair? Or is it just the way things are? Indika insists she knows when something feels revolting, when it feels wrong, but the devil reminds her there is no cold without warmth, no good without evil. The two can't exist apart. And in the end, he tells her the truth she's been running from.
Just remember that good and evil, warm and cold, those are just lines on a thermometer. God and the devil, those are you. One cannot exist without the other.
By the time she accepts this, everything symbolic around her breaks. The rosary she used to clutch in her arms so tightly, her last link to God, scatters when the Kudets is revealed to be empty. The point system that tracked her piety resets to nothing. The illusion is gone. And that's the tragedy and the liberation of Indika's story. She starts out believing there must be salvation, that obedience and sacrifice will bring her peace. But her trial of faith strips all of that away. What's left is not God, not the devil, not miracles or relics. What's left is Indika, just Indika. And lastly, but definitely not least, I want to talk about the world itself. Now, Indika takes place in an alternate Russia at the end of the 19th century and beginning of the 20th century. You've got steampunk machines, oversized animals, and these surreal, almost bordering absurd touches like canned fish taller than a person. But underneath the fiction, you can still see the history. This was a time when Russian society was shifting fast. Religion was losing its grip, and revolutionary, materialist ideas were taking over. Now, what really stands out, though, is how the world looks and feels to Indika. Everything around her is massive. Dogs, cows, machinery, even piles of stacked paper or garbage all tower over her. And like the world in one instant, just like that, can swallow her whole. And this in particular reminded me of Gogol's Small Man. In his stories, ordinary people are crushed under the weight of society. They're overlooked, powerless, forgotten. And that's exactly how Indika is shown. She isn't just a nun with doubts. She's a small figure that is lost in a world that is impossibly big and completely indifferent to her. And then, of course, those flashbacks. When the game shifts into 8-bit, it suddenly feels warm and nostalgic. It's a reminder that Indika once had joy, and it's been stripped away. Even prayer, which you use as a gameplay mechanic, reflects this too. When the devil's voice overwhelms Indika, the environment quite literally cracks, and you obviously pray to patch things up, just enough to keep moving forward. But the voice never leaves, and the cracks always come back. And it's truly such a powerful way to show how ritual can soothe, but it can't truly heal. All of these things that I've just mentioned makes the world of Indika feel oppressive, absurd, and heavy. And through it, we're reminded just how small she really is. Like Gogol's Small Man, she doesn't have the power to change the world. All she can do is stumble through it, question it, and finally face the truth that no miracle is coming to save her. And that's Indika, a game that honestly doesn't feel much like a game at all, but more like a film. What makes it stick out, though, is that it isn't a happy ending or a tragic ending. It's just an ending. There's no miracle, no redemption, the Kudets is empty, the prayers don't work. Indika isn't telling you to believe or not to believe. It's showing you the cost of putting all your hope in hollow systems, and the pain of realizing salvation might not come. And that's why the story resonated with me so much, because in the end, Indika isn't a saint. She isn't a sinner. She's just human. And sometimes that has to be enough. But what do you think? Do you think, was Indika's ending tragic, liberating, or maybe something in between? And also, if you have a favorite scene or a favorite moment or anything in the game that you would want to talk about, let me know in the comments down below, because I don't want to stop talking about this game. And if you're still here and made it through all of this, thank you for watching. And now remember, the important thing is to never, ever, ever stop questioning. Even me. Till next time.